Here's the fact, Jack. I charge $950 an hour. Ted is $400. If you have a stupid question, you call Ted.
Blood and Black Rum Podcast presents Marriage Story. Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from ColdSploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
And we are back. We said at the beginning of the year that we were going to do a different movie, and not a horror movie, for this episode. We've been doing quite a few horror movies and Christmas movies and stuff like that. So we're changing it up a little bit, and we're going to go back to, I guess, our high school roots when we watched The Squid and the Whale by Noah Baumbach. And we decided that, you know what? We really like that movie. So why not revisit a movie, or not revisit actually, but revisit Noah Baumbach with his new movie that was released on Netflix called Marriage Story.
He's been busy the past couple of years.
He's been doing quite a few different things. He had that one show that was on Netflix too. I don't know the name of it. I haven't really followed it, but there was a show that he did.
He did the Meyerowitz stories, Greenberg.
Yeah, right, exactly. The Meyerowitz, yeah. Is that a story, or is that a movie?
No, it's a movie, not a...
It's a movie, okay. So I know that, he has been pretty busy, and I haven't really followed much of his stuff since he did Squid and the Whale.
Well, I think there was a lull in between, Life Aquatic, co-writing that with Wes Anderson, and Squid and the Whale. I think he just kind of did other projects or something. Nothing really big. Because I remember, I think the next film after that was Greenberg, and that's 9 years later.
Yeah, I did see that one as well. It's been a long time since I've seen that one. So I don't really remember too much about it. I liked it.
I'm sure it's similar.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of the same themes in many of his movies. But yeah, I really like a lot of things that Noah Baumbach does, and this is really not outside of our wheelhouse, though it might seem like it at first. We're named Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We have weird, Twilight Zone-esque music at the beginning of our show. We mostly do horror movies, but we have done some Wes Anderson movies before. We did Life Aquatic. We did
Grand Budapest.
Yep, Grand Budapest Hotel.
That's it.
We didn't do. We didn't do the other one that he. Didn't we? Did we do the other one, the Moonrise Kingdom? Did we do that one?
No.
No, we did not. Okay. I couldn't remember.
That was way before the podcast.
I saw it, so it must be I'm remembering as I saw it, but that was pre-podcast. We didn't do it. But we definitely did the Grand Budapest Hotel. We did Life Aquatic. So it's not outside of our wheelhouse so much. We do enjoy Wes Anderson movies and, the quirkies, as I like to call them, the quirkies. And also, we like the dramatic as well. We fancy ourselves here as real movie critics, right? We are, upper echelon critics. So obviously, Marriage Story being an Academy Award nominated film, we should do it. Because...
let's just go down the whole list.
The whole list of Academy Award. I've seen a couple of them. I haven't seen a lot, but we could. We also plan to do Joker at some point. We had said that we were going to do it, and then we never really got a chance to do it. So that's another one that we do plan on doing at some point. Marriage Story is, I would say, a work from Noah Baumbach that is somewhat. It's almost autobiographical in a sense. It is rumored that it follows his divorce pretty significantly, which is not really different from other writings that Noah Baumbach has done before. Squid and the Whale was mirroring his parents' divorce.
If Jeff Daniels was his father, he lived a good life.
And actually, it's kind of there's a lot of polarity between The Squid and the Whale and Marriage Story. They're fairly different films, but at the same time, there's a lot of overlap in them too, and some of that is purposeful, obviously drawing attention to that film, and then some of it is sort of just within the themes themselves.
We can compare it to a Venn diagram.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, Marriage Story, we see quite a bit of Noah Baumbach stepping outside of what we consider the quirkiness of Squid and the Whale. The Squid and the Whale has a lot more intentional humor involved in it. That's sort of, I guess I would say, wry. It's in there, and a part of that's from Jeff Daniels as well. His character specifically is like your comic entry into that film. Whereas Marriage Story is more of a true, almost realistic depiction of what it's like to be in a divorce, in a separation, trying to paint that picture as realistic as possible. The highs, the lows, the sort of, what is involved in every facet of that separation. And everything in between as well. So the good stuff that happened in the marriage, the bad stuff that happens afterwards, it's all sort of there. And I guess that we're seeing like two different sides of Baumbach's writing with both of those movies, but they would be a very good double feature to have. You see Squid and the Whale, an early Baumbach picture, and then you see where he's evolved to with Marriage Story, and also the similarities between them.
15-year gap between the two.
Yeah. So there's evolution there. There's change-ups and...
Which, hurts the soul when I think of that, like...
How long it's been. Yeah, since Squid and the Whale. Yeah.
14, 15 years.
Yeah. It's crazy. But Marriage Story is, it's getting a lot of acclaim. It's one of again, like I said, it's a film that's nominated for Best Picture. Noah Baumbach did not get nominated for Best Director, but... It's still there. It's an Academy Award nomination. And it's interesting because it is one of those movies...
He'll get to slap that on his, every film from here
on out. Academy Award nominated.
Academy nominated,
Yeah. And it is interesting because it's a Netflix movie. It's a Netflix original. That's sort of like... has in the past been automatic disqualification for... it's a Netflix original. It's not real film. I
think now with the amount of talent that Netflix is getting for those films, you couldn't ignore it.
Yeah, you can't.
I still haven't seen Scorsese's The Irishman. No, but if you were to tell me that a Scorsese film wasn't getting nominated for like Best Director or Best Picture because it's on Netflix.
Yeah, it's a snub, and I think there's part of the problem is that there are so many Netflix originals that like sometimes they're hesitant to say like, well, it's real cinema for the Academy Awards. But when it comes to stuff like The Irishman, which I haven't seen but I assume is really good, and Marriage Story, which we did see and I liked it a lot, you can't just write it off because it's a Netflix original. It just doesn't make sense anymore. So it is good to see that they're kind of overcoming that stigma of like being labeled a Netflix original. It doesn't really matter.
Well, especially now too, with you have Hulu originals and Amazon originals.
It's almost like the direct to video of the '90s, where it was like direct to video. That movie fucking sucks. Shelve it.
I think at this point, the track record, there is a lot of like crappy, like Hulu, Amazon, and
The Open House being one of them I can think of on Netflix.
But at this point,
there's a lot of good on there. So it's much like theatrical releases now. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, and you sort through the filler.
And I think too, Netflix and all these stream sources, they're hard. It's going to be hard to compete with. Mm-hmm. You get to stay at home.
Plus,
that's a plus. You don't
have to deal with people being annoying.
Going out and making an effort.
Yeah. Make your own popcorn. Popcorn costs $1.
Yeah.
Coffee's available. I'm like an art theater.
There's a lot more ability to be creative in like the material.
Yep.
And be more. Kind of more auteur directed.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of the big studio projects, because they're not greenlighting anything, risky. What are we getting? We're getting the fucking Marvel films and DC films till the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
With Netflix, I don't think, for the most part, Netflix, I don't think they fund most of the projects. Maybe a couple of them they do, but I think they're all outside funded, and they just you get to use our platform as a means to, get it out there.
I'm not sure how they're produced.
I'm pretty sure most of them don't even, they just Netflix green lights said okay, yeah, and you have to come up with your own funding and production company for it. And if that's the case, it's a lot, it's going to be a lot easier for them to have a lot better content than what's getting put out in movie theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's when, why do you think now we're seeing 28 years later, we're getting a sequel, a true sequel to Ghostbusters.
That is true. Did you want to do a beer talk on this show, or did you want to just skip and do the film proper?
Well, we can do the beer talk.
Okay. Which one did you want to do? Because we've had a few lately. I'll just say we'll take a break for a second and we'll get into Marriage Story as a film instead of the Oscar talk that we've been doing, which I don't even really care that much about. Academy Awards, no, really doesn't mean much to me, but it is important in the context of Marriage Story. So thought we'd touch on it. For the beer talk, I guess I'll start. For Christmas, I bought you a special beer. I bought you the Amagang's Bourbon Barrel Adoration from 2019. It's 2019. They call it a Belgian Noel Ale with spices, and then put in bourbon barrels to give it a nice bourbon flavor. It comes in a 4-pack. It's pretty expensive. It's a special that I think it feels like they do every year, and it's a pretty hefty beer. Took me the entirety of Marriage Story to drink it, which Marriage Story is a fairly lengthy film at about 140 minutes. So it took me that and longer to drink one bottle of the 12-ounce bottle of this beer. So it's a heavy one, but I liked it. I think it's a beer that it's like one of those beers that we've had on the show for the last few episodes, of those beers that you're I am interested to try this. I don't know if I want to have a whole lot of them or ever have it again. It's another one of those hefty stouts where you're I give it a shot. It's experimental. I just want to have it one time and see what it's like. This one is what I would say, it's a very heavy, boozy, bourbony flavor. It's got the Belgian style to it, but very, very light. The bourbon really overpowers that flavor. And then I get a little bit of a molasses flavor to it as well. That probably comes out of the bourbon barrel, the bourbon itself. Bourbon sometimes tends to have a molassesy sweet flavor too. So really what I'm getting from it is a really bourbony beer at 11.5%. So it's a pretty strong ale, and one that I would say you can enjoy slowly, a sipping beer, probably one at a time. And, even then, I think one was plenty for me. This is it. I don't know if I'll ever have this one again, though it was good.
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted about it. I love me some Belgian beers. They're one of my favorite. They're probably one of my favorite style of beers. I do appreciate the bourbon flavor, but at the same time, it's not something I ever really want. Out of the several different bourbon barreled beers that we've had on here, I always find them to be too overpowering. It's not balanced. I think this beer would be much better if they were able to balance that bourbon flavor with this heavier, more alcohol based, Belgian style, because you don't really get to taste the Belgian yeast and the coriander and the malts that they use in it. It's just totally overpowered by the bourbon and alcohol aspect of it. So it really doesn't make it that much different than just any old winter warmer. It almost at times kind of comes off dark fruity,
strong ale sort of thing,
which is not something that we're fans of here. So I mean, it wasn't bad, but would I ever go out of my way to have it? No, because it took me, when I had it, went a couple of weeks ago, it took me quite a while, like 2 hours to get through it too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say try it if it's like your thing. But again, I have yet to have a bourbon, barrel type beer that's been able to balance the bourbon aspect with the style of beer that they're going for.
Yeah, I think that this is really overpoweringly bourbon. And so it's really going to depend on your preference for that type of flavor in your beer. Like, I love bourbon. But even that, like, this is really on the, like, bourbon sweet side for me in this beer. So I liked it. It's just a sipping beer. It took a long time for me to get through it. So I'm glad I had it. Glad I tried it. I just wouldn't say – I wouldn't probably go out of my way to get it again. I wouldn't choose to, like, if somebody offered me a selection, I probably wouldn't go with this one. So take that into consideration. And this is probably a beer for somebody else. Somebody probably really loves those celery, not the vegetable celery, but the cellar-like flavors of this beer.
Hey, it's been sitting down in this nice dank basement for 3 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The mustiness.
Yeah.
So yeah. Did you want to talk about anything else? Did you want to talk about
No, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. I mean, we might as well talk about it while we've got it on the show and go, especially since it was so expensive, we probably won't get it again. Might as well bring it up.
Well, I was telling people at work about that Candy Cat mushroom beer. They were just looking at me straight-eyed.
I know.
Wondering, what the hell are you talking about?
Actually, it's pretty funny because I was just watching The Connors yesterday, the Roseanne spinoff that they have on now. Mm-hmm. And I love it when sitcoms treat, especially like working class people like the Connors are, and they treat, they talk about beer, and obviously they like their very macro beers. And so they just had a joke about a guy bringing, I guess what it was like an organic small batch IPA. They brought in a small batch IPA over. And at this point now...
Which is funny because most of those writers are probably like, they drink that all the time.
Well, not only that, but most of the time, I feel like IPAs aren't really outside the scope of like normal macro beers anymore. Like many macro breweries are making IPAs at this point. Yeah. So it's not really out of the question that like now somebody that, we think of as like working class Midwest guy that like Dan Connor is would be opposed to an IPA. I guess they threw in the small batch organic.
I'm sure Dan Connor, he'd be riding on his lawnmower. I'm like, let me crack open this Founders All Day IPA.
Yes. Oh. I just think it's funny. Like now, a Candy Cat mushroom beer would be very funny on something like that because that is, I would say, outre.
Bougie.
Yeah, out of the normal scope of what you would see. And so, that would be more I just think it's funny that now we still continue to use IPA as like the micro brew of choice when we're going to make fun of millennials and their random weird beers. There's way weirder that they could use that they probably don't even think about. So. All right.
Was it wholly organic?
Huh?
Did they source all of their materials from local farmers?
I don't know. Maybe. Hopefully they got the Candy Cat mushrooms from their local Rogue's in like Portland, Oregon, I think. So hopefully they got it from their Oregon suppliers. I don't know.
Actually, for Dan Connor, it'd be Goose Island, because aren't they in Illinois?
Yeah. Probably. It'd be Goose Island. Yeah.
Which Goose Island's not even micro anymore.
No, it's macro. Yeah. All right, so Marriage Story.
I would say, hell, at this point, I wouldn't even consider Sam Adams to be micro.
Nope.
They're big beer.
They've way expanded, yeah. All right, Marriage Story. Let's get into it. I'm itching to talk about it.
Got some thoughts and feelings.
That's right. There's a lot of feelings in this movie. As Netflix's subtitles told us, we should be feeling thoughtful. We should be feeling emotional. Every time the music plays, which is very seldomly. There's not a lot of musical notes in this. But when it does play, the subtitles, they tell you how to feel. Feel thoughtful, you feel... There's no whimsical. It's not a Steven Spielberg movie.
There are moments where the music does sound slightly whimsical, and I'm like, we're getting close to Spielbergian whimsy.
That's right, yeah. But it doesn't tell you that. You're thoughtful or emotional. One of the
sentimental.
two. Yeah, sentimental, yeah. One of the two, or three. You should feel those throughout the movie. So yes, Marriage Story is a film about divorce. It's a film about two people, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, two beautiful people, going through separation. And we meet them in medias res. You know, they're going through this separation at this time. It's not really gotten to an ugly point yet. It's really at the beginning of that separation where they're still sort of trying to pursue the therapy involved in, you know, coming to amicable terms together about the separation. But it is a separation all the same. And so you know that at this point, the marriage has ended. The bargaining has begun. And so we meet these people at that stage in their life. They've got a son. They're basically living cross country at this point. One has pursued her career in LA. One is still doing his career in New York, in Brooklyn. And it's about the space, literally the space between them.
Space between.
That's right. Dave Matthews coming in with his yodel.
I mean, I would say if it was like the mid 2000s, you know, that would be.
That's right. Yeah, that would be the theme song for it.
Somewhere, you know, when you hit, you know, we're hitting the low and we're feeling sentimental.
That'd be great, actually, if somebody, you know, we did this for all like a '90s style thing where you have the movie. It's very like a powerful, emotional movie like Marriage Story, and you have like original songs from the soundtrack, Marriage Story, Dave Matthews, featuring Dave Matthews hit. Space between. But literally, the metaphor is the space between. You know, so L.A., New York, the metaphor being it's pretty far away. And so we're, as the audience, caught in the middle. We're like...
We're flyover country.
That's right. We're Iowa.
We're Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah. We have to come to terms with looking at Adam Driver and saying... I like Adam Driver. I like who you are in this film. I like the things that I've seen you do. But also, you're controlling. And you're career-oriented. And sometimes you do things that are selfish. And then we have to look at Scarlett Johansson and say, Scarlett,
make up your fucking mind.
You also have some issues that you're not dealing with. You know, you wanted to live a life that you maybe didn't voice to Adam Driver. And, you know, how was he supposed to navigate that? And so the film itself
communication.
That's right. The film itself is really a mediation of the two. It's saying how as the audience can we look at both of these characters without seeing one of them as the winner or the person that we would associate with more as the quote unquote right person in this scenario, because there really isn't one.
Which differs from the Squid and the Whale.
Yeah,
because by the end there's clearly you know,
there's a point where you come to and say
Jeff Daniels kind of a scumbag. Laura Linney, you're probably right to do what you did.
Exactly, and that in itself is probably.
From the perspective, which makes sense as the child growing up,
exactly.
You know, who's like blinded by I believe in dad. Mom's lying. Become as he gets older, being like, oh shit.
That's right. I find the interesting thing about this being somewhat autobiographical as a film is that it's actually a quite fair perspective from both sides to look at. And so obviously, Noah Baumbach directed and wrote this film. But I would expect him as the writer to be seeking some outside influence on his script. Having other people read it and say, "What do you think? Like, am I falling too far to one side here? Am I siding too much with Adam Driver in this scenario? Because, from his perspective, he would be Adam Driver, or maybe not. Maybe he flipped the mirror on itself. So maybe Noah Baumbach in this situation would be more like Scarlett Johansson, and he tried to change that thing up or see from a different perspective. But what I find interesting is that it really is a pretty fair look at both of those characters, where you're not falling to one side or another, where you're saying, I think. I side with Adam Driver in this the whole way. Adam Driver's completely right. Scarlett Johansson's wrong. Because that would be problematic for the script, right? Or problematic for you to view these characters and say, though it wants it to be, sort of a fair perspective, I think this person is more correct or right than this other person. It's an interesting...
You're the arbiter.
That's right. You are the person that's listening in to both sides and has to decide, who do you think is the right person here? And you really don't need to decide that. There's nobody sitting there at the end. There's no like pop-up card that says like, who do you like here? Make your choice. There's actually, they actually have a ballot in the theater, and you're like, pick one that you like. But it is interesting too because we are often, there's a whole court battle scene where a judge is hearing both sides of this case from their lawyers. And it's interesting that for the most part, they choose to not show the judge sitting in his chair, especially when they're going over the two lawyers are fighting. Basically, we are looking at both of those perspectives as the judge in that scenario. We are hearing both sides and then coming to conclusions ourselves.
Well, it's also great there in that scene, too, is you get to see when, like, you see, like, how little things that they said to each other get totally blown out of proportion. Mm-hmm. Like, how, like, a previous night, Scarlett Johansson had told Adam Driver that, like, I had, like, a little bit too much wine, tonight. And he's like, I understand. He's like, just so stressed. Yeah. And then the next time they're in court, that's getting used as she's an alcoholic.
Right.
And she was tending to the child. And you can see they panned, like, Adam Driver's face, like, oh, shit, that's what's really... And then it pans with Scarlett Johansson's face, and she's going like, oh, shit. And then, same thing happens to Adam Driver, where something that he said to Scarlett Johansson, their lawyer uses against, him to make him look like a shithead. And
it's that slow progression of, now we're pretty civil, and then as things get tenser and we can't come to decisions and we can't, neither of us can see eye to eye on this, it escalates to the point where we didn't want it to get to, and yet you can see that snowball effect of, like, it's just happening. Like, things are rolling where they did not anticipate.
Well, see, I think part of it too. Also, like I don't know if it's intentional, but it's kind of like a nice little critique on, like, the divorce proceedings. Mm-hmm. Because originally they're like, no, we're not going to get lawyers involved. They're still very amicable. Yes, we don't love each other anymore. We want to be separated, but we're going to try to figure it out and go from there. But then she gets a lawyer who, like, sweet talks her into, like, no, we're going to do all this and that and this and that. And then he doesn't, get a lawyer right away. He's like, no, we're going to do this fine and all this. And then all of a sudden he's hearing, like, the lawyer saying, no, I'm going to take this from you and that from you. And then he's like, oh, fuck, I got to go on the offensive too.
The threats come out.
Yeah. And then he gets a lawyer who's like, look, it's all about the kid. He's fine with that. And then as soon as he hears, like, he's going to lose this battle and get fucked over, he's like, well, I got to go back to the original lawyer, Ray Liotta, who is telling me this is how we're going to fight to win,
Yeah.
Because he, as the opening letter says, like, he doesn't like to lose.
That's right.
And
they're
just
both
totally
competitive. Yeah.
snowballs. And
yeah, and it's really... The way that it progresses is great. This is a lengthy film. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes long. But the slow progression is really useful because you're seeing that realistic tension and the frustration that comes from both sides of, one side can't... We're seeing both perspectives, and it's frustrating to the viewer, too, and very tense because... There isn't really a right answer here, and it just keeps escalating in the same way that, like, if you've ever been in an argument before where two people are arguing about similar things, but they're not the same, and you're constantly getting into a one-upsmanship that you're not really meaning to, but there's misunderstandings on both sides, and so it eventually comes to a head where you say things that maybe you've always been thinking, but you would never dare voice for whatever reason. For maybe because you're too scared to voice it, maybe because you're not sure that you mean it. But at the same time, like, you say it, and then you can't take it back. And that's where Marriage Story goes to, especially in, like, its middle portion. It gets extremely tense for the viewer because you're sort of in, like, that situation where it's, like, sort of cringy. You're like, I'm so glad I'm not literally in their situation right now.
Well, I think, too, the film also benefits a lot from the tenseness of like where their marriage went awry is left to be for the most part ambiguous. You know, absolutely. I mean, like we do hear ScarJo say like how she couldn't make up her mind, you know, like in what she wanted, she didn't know, and she felt like her opinions and things that she mattered to her weren't getting listened to and thoughtfully reciprocated by Adam Driver, and then Adam Driver also being kind of like, well, she was, you know, cold and ice, you know, distant from me. So, but like we don't get to see the buildup of what happened to it. Yeah,
there's no like easy. Here's what happened.
The only thing is that we get really like the tinder that like, you know, kind of. I mean, the thing that like lets the whole thing blow up is like he had an extramarital affair one time. You know, that's like the thing that sets it totally off. So I think that also helps to make the argument between like, you know, their fighting be much more balanced because we don't know every little nitty gritty detail about their relationship. We just like, here's like, you know, it's just gone off.
And I think too with the thing that Noah Baumbach is doing with that is it's sort of realistic in that a lot of times you probably don't know where there was this one incident where it was like, okay, the marriage is over. There wasn't one incident. There was many. And you can't really pinpoint what was the deciding factor. It's sort of like a series of small wounds that sort of lead up to
fester.
Yeah, that final thing where it's just like dead. And I think that's pretty realistic as to, and obviously I've never been in this situation, but something that would cause a separation like this, and I think it's really realistic that they don't know. They both of them seem to not know exactly what it was that caused this separation, and they can't voice it. There's this one really great scene where they're both in Adam Driver's apartment when he's staying in L.A., and they're fighting, and they're escalating this fight, and they're just continually escalating until they get to a point where they're saying things that possibly they mean. Like Adam Driver says, you know, sometimes he wishes that Scarlett Johansson would just die if he thought that their son would be okay, you know, that she should just die. And obviously, you know, maybe he thinks that, but also maybe it's a heat of a moment thing where you say things and you're just like, I don't know why I said that. You know, it just came out. And so there's that escalation that I think is really great and very tense and something that's really realistic to real life. Sometimes you never know what exactly caused that issue, that rift between you. And then also there's a great, in that same scene, they bring up a really great point of what is it that now that you're in the divorce proceedings, are you looking back and are you seeing things differently in your life now that you know that you're getting a divorce? Where Scarlett Johansson says that she wasn't happy in their marriage, and Adam Driver says, you think you're not happy. You think you weren't happy when you really were. There's that whole look back in that memory process of, was I really happy in that moment? Did I think I was happy? Was I actually happy? Where you're just not sure anymore. You know, so it's that look back thing. Now you're in the present. You can't change the past, and you can't change where the future is headed. And so you look back and you see things differently. It's a really interesting portrayal of relationships that evolve over time, and people change, and you change in different ways. Maybe you change apart, maybe you change together. Things that you can't just pinpoint and say, yeah, this is what happened. Interesting. And also really tense and frustrating for the viewer too. Supposed to be frustrating. It's pretty clear that Noah Baumbach
there's a couple of scenes where we see like different mediators sitting around.
Yeah.
And you can see just how like uncomfortable it is for them.
Where like to the point where they're like, I'm gonna order lunch.
Yeah, like the whole expert that comes in to watch him being like a father to his son. Like she's just sitting there, like all mousy and shit. Like, I'll just have water and okay.
That's extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's like
just. I think partly because
I want to ask, like, does she have no soul? What kind of job, like, is that? That feels like the kind of job where you'd have to go home every night and like cry, cut yourself, and you know drink drink yourself. Like, okay, going in tomorrow. See,
Yeah, there's also that like sardonic comment that Adam Driver makes where he's like, "Do you ever observe married couples?" Where she's like, "No, why would I?"
I know, that's a good line,
because it's it's just he's just drawing attention to like you're only seeing people in their worst, literal worst scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is really interesting. It does draw a lot of attention to divorce in general. What people go through, how much it costs. The ridiculousness of like the escalation and how lawyers can sometimes pivot what you're saying as what you want and make it into something else because it's a win for them. Lawyers are and divorce proceedings still trying to win. They want to win just as much as other people do. Even if you came to them and you didn't want there to be a winner. You just wanted there to be equal playing fields.
I will say too that's kind of something that's I don't know exactly how I feel about it yet. It might take some time to digest. I don't know how I feel about them being so amicable for the most part.
The two,
between Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, because for like 75% of the film, they're going through it very amicably. It's only like when like the lawyers start getting involved that the heat gets turned up. But like for the most part,
well, I can kind of see it though, especially because Adam Driver is sort of throughout a fair amount of the film not really expecting to be a divorce per se, a separation maybe, but like he's not expecting it to be like the end all be all of their relationship. It seems like so he's sort of still. I don't even know if maybe he's subconsciously doing this, but just thinking like,
well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's hard for me to digest like it going so amicably. But maybe because, like I said, because when we were watching, I was saying like that would totally not be me. I would be Tecumseh Sherman on the march to Georgia, burning everything, scorched earth in the bath,
But you have to think about it from the perspective of you've been with this person for a long time, made a kid, you at one point really did like each other.
I know, but there's a lot of people, and you probably know them too, that have gone through very.
I think it depends. Yeah, no, and I know, and I think it depends on what happened in that.
It's like a 75-25 on the.
I think it depends on what happened in that relationship too. So if the husband was extremely abusive and stuff like that, possibly you would see things completely differently. But because the film leaves things up ambiguously as to what happened in a relationship, and they really don't seem to understand where it went wrong either, there's less of that like outright hatred for the other person. So you still have the amicableness of like, I like this person as a friend. I don't want to lose them as a friend. We've been with each other. We've dealt with each other. And you see that at the end of the film too, that Scarlett Johansson, for all of their issues and everything that they've fought about, at the end she ties his shoelace because she's used to that. That's something that she used to do for him. And so that implicitness, you can't get rid of that.
I thought more that was more because she said he's the one that's detail oriented, pays attention. I thought more of that of
change.
Yeah, being like that's something like that she's gained from him.
I think it's both. I think like that's true. That's something that she's changed. She's changing her life. She said it when she's getting finger banged in the car. But I think also too, it's just like
very empowering too.
I think it's just that message. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I think it's that message too that like these are things that you would do for that person in your life that you've lived with for 24/7 for years, and so you're used to that. And so changing that entirely where that person leaves your life forever is really difficult. And so you're trying to make sense of that. And I think that like sometimes things do end in just hatred, but also some things are a lot less explicit like that. There's a lot of factors involved in how you feel about it. So really interesting. I mean, and again, there's no real right or wrong element of it. It's presented as is, and as the audience, you're just taking it in. Both sides. How did you feel about the film being shot in 1:66:1 aspect ratio? Did you notice that with the little bars on the side?
No, I didn't.
It's not a very common aspect ratio for modern films to be shot in. A lot older films used to. Hammer particularly used to use 1:66:1. some of those were just simply because that's the type of film that they had. But this obviously was a choice to shoot the film in one. They could have shot it in normal widescreen.
Did they actual shot it on film and not digital?
I don't know. Doesn't matter though. I mean, he's still mad at it for 166:1. And
I was gonna say because apparently someone was saying at work the other day that Kodak started to get a slight boost now because people are buying like their old film.
Oh, really?
Like there's a slight demand for older film,
Yeah.
and I know Tarantino's one that likes to shoot in
Yeah.
like 35 millimeter and all that. So
I just found it really interesting that they decided to mat it to 166:1 because it obviously scrunches a little bit, pushes things inward. You're losing that stuff on the sides that you would normally see in a widescreen shot. And I think that was mainly so that you have much more of a focus on just two people in a shot or one person in a shot, very close-ups. Film really likes the close-up shots, especially in that scene that I was talking about where they are sort of coming at each other very aggressively and Adam Driver punches the wall.
Very angry white man-esque.
Yeah, and there's that interplay of very close-up shots of them. Like, it's actually cutting off like their forehead, almost like the top of their forehead because it's so close up. And it gives you that very, very tense, personal feeling of being like right in their space. And I think that's what the 166:1 aspect ratio was really attempting to do is like get very close. Scrunch everything in, get you very close to these people, cutting out the sides of it all. It's that idea of space again, which it brings up many, many times. Especially there's a really funny continual theme of people talking about LA and how great it is because there's so much space. See, New York, there's not a lot of space. LA, there's so much space. So it's that again, that metaphor about
I like that everyone just wanted BLT.
Yeah.
Just so simple. I just want BLT.
BLT's good.
And how dare she order for Adam Driver?
Again, it's just that that part of their relationship where
she knows what he wants.
It's normal. Yeah, right? You would normally do that. Hard to break that habit, I guess. So it's interesting to watch Marriage Story from the perspective of someone who's never been through a divorce before. I am married, and I did not go through a divorce. And so it sort of puts you in that scenario. It shows you exactly what you're going to go through. It's intense, and it's very I would say that it hopefully will throw people off of like pursuing it, right? At least you're like, well, I'm going to lose all my money. It's going to be ugly.
That retainer fee. Woof.
Yeah. That's also a really good line where he's like, goes to Ray Liotta as the lawyer for the first time, and he's like, my fee is $950 an hour. Ted's fee over there is $400. If you got a stupid question, you call him. It's a really good line. But honestly, Ray Liotta himself in this film
is great.
He's awesome. He's a delight in this, even though he's a raging asshole.
He would have, fit on. He should have been casted for People versus OJ.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been great on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the tie-ins between the Squid and the Whale, but there is one that really resonates early on in the film.
It's when he goes to the museum that has the whale and the squid exhibit.
But the tennis court scene is great. Just immediately draws that parallel between the Squid and the Whale.
One day we'll have to go down to Brooklyn and try to find that tennis court.
Let's try to find it. I love tennis. I'll have to play.
Would have been great if there was a cameo of Stephen Baldwin in the background too,
Yeah.
Teaching some kid like, all right, this is how you serve it over.
I think another thing that Marriage Story does, though, is turn you off of Brooklyn theater.
He's an up-and-coming avant-garde.
It's certainly... I don't enjoy theater that much. And Adam Driver's theater seems like just the worst in terms of...
You know what it is? It's heck. Don't let it drop. Ever. Don't
right.
let it drop. Ever!
That's right. It is that.
It's Freddie Prinze. And
yeah, because it's just so cheesy, I think, to me. It's hard to take it seriously in this film, but I guess, you're supposed to take...
smell the toast. What the hell does that even mean?
I could smell it. It was literally my favorite scene of the year.
And that's like such an LA thing. Like, I saw this one random play out some fucking bungalow in Brooklyn, and it was, fucking annoying. That's annoying.
Definitely turns you off of the Brooklyn theater aspect.
That and LA, both of them. I just push New York City and LA off, off into the distance.
That's another thing that's interesting to me about the two characters, both Scarlett Johansson's and Adam Driver's, is that they were sort of like yuppie upper class characters, and yet you could still... I didn't feel turned away from them. Partly, I guess that's because they still associate the struggles of, like, no matter where you are in upper class life, lower class life, the struggle of divorce is still the same. Except when you're in upper class, there's more money involved. There's more money to lose and more money to gain, and more things to separate. But I did find it interesting. A lot of people would probably find these two characters hard to relate to, except that they put them in a very relatable situation.
I will say, going back to like the whole LA Brooklyn thing, I'd find the Brooklyn to be less pretentious, because that whole scene where ScarJo's on that set and like you had like the directors and staff just fucking talking offhand about her divorce and like in this like pretentious like bougie dipshit sense. That like just was like angering me just like watching it.
Well, it's supposed to.
I know.
It's supposed to be overwhelming.
No, I know, and it's like and like I understand that, but it's just like, oh my god, like if that's what the film is, I would like, no, never, absolutely never. Like,
great.
Who are you fucks? To be like, hold the baby, well, and like and that's also great too. And like, hold it like this, and she's like, I need to support the head, as somebody who's actually been a mother who's had to hold a child. She's like, well, what do you want me to do? Just use your shoulder. Use your shoulder. Oh, okay, and it's like a CGI baby wrap because it's got a like a blue wrapped and taped, so they're gonna like CGI the baby in it or whatever.
Yeah.
That whole just like I get that's supposed to be aggravating, but that just like made my blood boil. Just like,
that's a good scene. I think they do a really good job of making those scenes stand out, making you feel a certain way, overwhelmed, tense, anxious. It does a good job.
What the hell was their TV pilot anyway?
I don't know. It was supposed to sound really ridiculously
like Mother Earth,
Yeah, like. I don't know, some science fiction thing she was doing that was supposed to be based on science and reality, and then they had their science expert who's like, nah, there's no science in this.
Some grad student from UCLA, I guess.
And then she ends up winning an Emmy for it. So yeah. We did not talk about that there's Halloween in this film twice, and both times suck. Because in LA, during Halloween, they're out at like 5 o'clock and it's bright sunlight, trick or treating, and then they're going to go get dinner afterwards. Like, who does that? Not only that, but the kid has one Halloween, does it, gets a bunch of candy, comes to Adam Driver's apartment, and he's going to take him out for Halloween, and the kid says, I'm too tired. And I'm like, no, you're going out. You're going out again.
I will say that part made me totally think of Jeff Daniels and in the Squid and the Whale, where they're having the talk about like he's talking to his younger son. He's like, no, you like books and art and stuff. He's like, no, I want to be a tennis player. He's like, no, you don't want to be a Philistine, like Stephen Baldwin. He's like, yeah, I do want to be a Philistine. Yeah. And he's like, no, you don't. No, because he's like, come on, we're going to be Frankenstein and the Invisible Man. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, come on, we're going to be Frankenstein and Invisible. I worked really hard. Come on. Now I want to be a ninja. You little shit, come on.
Yeah.
You want to be Frankenstein.
Yeah, there's a few things like that, too. And especially, when she says, to Adam Driver, you're just like your father. And again, that would be calling back to what we know as autobiographically the Squid and the Whale as well. Talking about the alcoholism and things like that. And then also just all the ways that Adam Driver reacts are sort of like how Jeff Daniels reacts in The Squid and the Whale, maybe a little less
comedic.
Yeah, and exaggerated, but all the same, like when Adam Driver kind of like, and I think this was probably purposeful, but he punches the wall, but it's like sort of like a soft punch that does leave a hole in the wall. It's a good scene because it's like, he's not as aggressive or violent, but he's still, he's aggravated, so he punches the wall, but it's not like meant to be a really hard punch. I think Adam Driver himself does a really great job in this movie with his acting in general. And the scene where he has to break down and cry is great. It's very well done, very, just authentic part of that scene. Because
that goes back to the whole talking about how they're trying to one up each other, and he's ranting about how he was married to her and he was in his 20s and he could have been fucking a bunch, a whole bunch of women because but he didn't because he was with her and he loved her, and he wasted his 20s even though that he couldn't, he might have not have wasted his 20s. He was hot shit. He was the hot director, and I think that's supposed. I think it, that's supposed to be like I think it's more of him trying to be hurtful than regret. Like, I think maybe he does have some regret. Like, man, I kind of fucked my, threw my 20s away. But at the same time, I think it's more because he's trying to be hurtful to her. Like, like, I didn't have to marry you, and you took this away from me. Because she was saying how, like, he didn't listen to her, go to LA and let her do, projects. He'd always say, like, talk about it later, because they're arguing about the extramarital affair he had, which, I think point that he brings up that's really, really good is when she's like, "Do you love her?" She's like, "No, I don't. I didn't love her."
Yeah.
And you see how we see really small interactions between them where he didn't his feelings for her he didn't have any. It was just like a release, to like be able to relate to somebody. It wasn't the sex aspect, but it was like he got to have a laugh. He got to have like a joyful conversation with somebody. But other than that, which he wasn't getting from his wife at that point.
Yeah, I think that ScarJo is good in this movie. I think Adam Driver is great in this movie.
He's the show.
Yeah, exactly. He definitely is like the best element here. That's not to say that ScarJo is not good or anything like that.
I think probably her best role.
Yeah, I think she does a good job. I also think
I've said before on the podcast from different films we reviewed with her, and I've never felt her to be that great of an actress. I think she actually did get to show some range. I think her range at times is pretty limited, but I think she did a good job here. Adam Driver was great.
Yeah, yeah. I think that she was good. She did a good job, definitely a nice job. But Adam Driver really steals the show here as he has a lot of range, and he gets a chance to showcase it too, especially at the end there where he has to break down. And Noah Baumbach doesn't really, there a lot of times with a crying scene you would have cuts. And there's not really that cut there. You have sort of like he just goes into it, so there's no real way to splice and edit to make it, to make two different shots work. It's just all in one, and it's great. He does a really great job. What else did we talk about?
And I think it's a good job too because she comforts them afterwards, like realizing like their argument there was just them being petulant and trying to hurt each other. It wasn't, anything productive. It was,
Yep. It's good.
And they do say in the beginning of the film, too, that he's the more emotional one, like, because he's the one that will cry during films, when he watches them, and she's more, reserved. Like, one of the critiques, and I do find this to be funny, like, after, like, they're getting separated, he's like, well, I do have 2 notes about your performance. And he's like, I don't think I should say, it's probably not appropriate now. She's like, no, go ahead. And he's like, trying too hard for the crying, trying too hard for that emotion. And you look too dignified with your back. You need to, not be so dignified with your back, but you need to, tone it down. And then you need to stop trying to push that emotion if it's not going to come. And she's, like, I can't help it.
Yeah. What else?
Well, we said Ray Liotta was cool. How about, this kind of like filmed as like a who's who of going down memory lane of, actors and actresses. Laura Dern.
Laura Dern having a big year this year. She's in Greta Gerwig's Little Women and in this one.
So unrecognizable from her Jurassic Park days. Would never notice.
Laura Dern's looking very leggy in this movie.
Yeah, they made sure to have her, like, you know, in the heels and the...
Extremely tall.
Yes.
A lot of leg. Did notice that. No, but she's really good as well in this.
Very talked about. Ray Liotta.
Yeah. I mean, they both do a really good job in their respective roles as the two opposing counsel for lawyers. I mean, both of them are coming at it from different perspectives, quite literally both having worked on divorces in very similar matters of like men versus women and things like that, knowing what the other side is going to try to do, and then, you know, escalating it that much further. I thought they both did a really good job.
Had Julie Haggerty of Airplane fame.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't know she was still acting. I was happy to see her, you know, running around being like, you can't be getting a divorce with... I love Charlie.
Yeah, G-Ma. Yeah, that was great too, especially...
You're still talking to him too? Yeah, he said he needs his camera back.
Yeah, it gives you sort of that perspective of, you know, what a divorce does to the rest of the people. You know, what kind of casualties does it have surrounding your relationship? You know, things that you wouldn't expect, but that, you know, now you can't do. Like she says, you just can't talk to him anymore. You can't be friends with him anymore.
I know it's not supposed to. I think it is supposed to be like, it's supposed to be very dark humor when they're talking about ScarJo's dad and he was a closet gay man that she was married to. And she's like, I know your father was homosexual, but I got through that. And I wish I dealt with it differently, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, she's good in this role as well. She's got gets a limited amount of stuff to do, but does a good job with it anyway.
Had Wallace Shawn, Princess Bride fame. Always happy to see him. You know,
I like to see him.
I just love his advice. I just love his advice to Adam Driver. Now that you're separated, go out and fuck as many people as you can. Man, woman, it doesn't matter. Treasure it.
Yeah, he's got an interesting role. Just a very small one, but
he's and Robert Smigel.
Yeah, Robert Smigel. I know.
Is the mediator.
Shows up as a mediator. Yeah. It's interesting. They do have a who's who. Other than that, anything else? Yeah, like I said, the music is fairly sporadic throughout this movie. It doesn't, a lot of it is just basically, literally drama, almost to the point where Noah Baumbach is mimicking what a play would be like. There's a lot of black fade outs, as though it's a play with the lights going off, fading out into black, and then the next scene. So the music is really used sporadically. So you don't get a lot of it. There's a couple montages, especially when they go Halloween trick or treating. What did you think of the music, though?
It was good. I think it benefited from being sporadic and not.
It's not one of those films that's like just hitting you over the head with music.
You're right. The film is like a play because mainly it's the interactions between ScarJo and Adam Driver and then their son too. So I think they're acting and what they're portraying is what matters most and is what's driving the film. So I think the whole him being a play director and a playwright, definitely lends credence to the film because that's definitely the style that they're going for here. Like it's not trying to be overly cinematic and bombastic.
Yeah, I agree.
Stylistically or,
Yeah, I think that was the best way to do it. It's just not, you don't want a film that's just constantly got music running underneath it. It undermines the script, really, and the delivery from the actors. So because you don't need, like Netflix tells us, having to know, like, okay, this is a thoughtful, pensive scene because the music sounds thoughtful. Or,
what's emotional. Funny too is like if the subtitles are there for somebody who's like deaf and like has to read what's going on, It's not like they're gonna know what sentimental music is.
Right.
What would thoughtful music be?
Yeah, it's true.
Doesn't really tell you a whole lot. It is funny. I do appreciate the touch.
Yeah. Anything else that we didn't touch on?
I think
we covered pretty much everything. All right. So on a scale of...
Oh, I will say, too, sure. The scene where Adam Driver cuts himself, that's, right from the... Because I joked right before that. I said, what, is he going to have a heart attack like Jeff Daniels in the Squid and the Whale? And instead of having a heart attack this time, he has goes the Luke Wilson route and Royal Tenenbaums and slits his wrist.
Yeah.
Though on accident.
Yeah. That's a good one as well. That's a nice, dark comic element to it. And very relatable to me, because I've pretty much been in situations like that where I'm, washing my hands and trying to get fucking paper towels that are across the room and pulling it with my foot. Could definitely relate to that.
Well, so you need to have what I have, the paper towel rolls above your sink.
That's true. I did like how the film sometimes made Adam Driver sort of goofy, where he pulls up too far away from the ticket booth, so he can't get the ticket when he's going into the parking garage. That happens to me all the freaking time, because I can never judge. So be at the car wash and be like, I can't. He has to open the door to get the ticket. Yeah. So, all right. So on a scale of 1 to 10 BLTs, what would you give Marriage Story?
I'll give it an 8.5. It's probably the best film I saw from 2019. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that's better. Mm-hmm. Really good, really impactful. I think, Noah Baumbach, director I like. He's, very much in the kind of style and vein of Wes Anderson, who's, one of my favorite directors of all time. So definitely have always appreciated his style. I think Adam Driver and ScarJo are great. Adam Driver, terrific performance. I do really appreciate how it's kind of very much like a play, and it plays out like a play. It's very isolated, small. Everything's very muted. Even the colors, even though people are wearing bright, vibrant things, the overall balance of the colors, toned down, kind of like when we were watching the remake of Suspiria, how it had that kind of faded, look to it, even though it had these bright colors in it. They were, very much faded away. You see the settings that they're in, it's always very sparse and, not overly decorated, his apartment and their apartment at home too. It's all, very muted. Just very interesting. I think really well thought out, thoughtful take on a divorce.
Yeah.
And very interesting and very engaging. For the 2 hours and 20 minutes or 2:15, however long it was engaged through it the entire time. Definitely would say this would be a film worthy of being nominated for Best Picture.
I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good movie, a really good look at divorce and separation and how it escalates, how relationships change over time, trying to get to the realism of understanding how people in that relationship maybe don't understand how their relationship changed over time and how they changed. And so that change sort of happened gradually, like how people grow up and you don't really notice it if you're with them all the time. You don't see it until you have that, perspective away from it to understand what went wrong. I do like how it brings up those very difficult questions sometimes of when you're in a relationship or when you're in a fight and you're trying to fight about something and neither of you are really coming to an understanding of what the other is saying. And so that escalates further and further until you get to a point where you really can't come to an agreement. It's a really, it tries to put a script to those really difficult life decisions that are made. And I think it does a really good job of making it as realistic as possible, putting the audience in that role as judge and arbitrator, and also making sure that there's a point where no one person really feels like they're right or wrong in this scenario. You can't really come to a perfect conclusion about what happened or, who did what and why it was wrong. that's really what the story needs. It's just an equal perspective on both of it. So overall, really, really good, engaging movie. Tense, suspenseful sometimes, anxiety-inducing. Sad, happy, emotional, and overall just a fun movie to watch. Well, maybe not. I don't know if I want to say fun, but a nice, thought-provoking experience all the same. With Noah Baumbach's good style and interesting choices artistically, like the 166:1 aspect ratio that I was talking about. Just looking at those things and taking a look at how the framing and things like that, just continue to accentuate the themes of the movie. Really good job all around. Glad I watched it.
Yeah.
All right, so we have come to that time of the show where we deliberate on what we want to watch next time.
Parasite?
Bong Joon-ho? I would be down for that if I can get it. If I can get a copy of it, I will. I would certainly want to watch it. Really, it looks really interesting. We're just going to go through the list of Academy-nominated films.
No, it's a film I've been meaning to watch.
You want to watch that one too? So we've got like Parasite, we've got Joker to watch, we've got obviously the infallible Black Christmas remake to watch. Yeah, that's fine. If I can get Parasite, we'll do Parasite. If I can't get Parasite, what would you want to do instead? Because there is a possibility that we're certainly not going to be able to see it in theaters. I might have to find it some other way, and it might just be like a home video cam. So,
then no, that ruins.
Right. So if we can't get that, what else would you be interested in instead to do?
I don't know. I was just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was still in theaters, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Parasite I think is a good choice. We'll just have to see if we can find it in some way. I'm trying to think of another movie that we had talked about, that we had discussed doing. Oh, you know what? Child's Play, the remake. We had discussed doing, and I actually have it, so that could be another option if we can't get Parasite.
Little late.
Right.
Little late.
But we had discussed doing it at some point, and
let's say a little late to the Aubrey Plaza party.
Yeah. So possibly Parasite in 2 weeks, or maybe Child's Play, the remake. So
or maybe Black Christmas, or maybe the Joker.
Could be whatever we decide to do. Whatever.
We just take a bunch of films and put them on a dartboard, and we lob darts at them. And
what are we gonna do today? So that'll be back in 2 weeks, and then see in 2 weeks. It'll be in February. We'll be coming up to Valentine's Day. So we could do Valentine, the slasher, because we didn't do that one yet. So we could do that one. And then pretty soon we're going to be doing...
This podcast has been so bogged down by slasher-themed holiday films in the Marvel universe.
Well, you know what? We're almost to the end of the slasher-themed ones. So
we might have to go back to like a weekly schedule, because it's just like, let's see. Oh, fuck, another holiday, another holiday slasher to do. Oh, fuck, another Marvel film. Let's go out and see that. Oh, fuck, a DC film. Oh, fuck, another Marvel.
It's true. It's true.
And before you know it's Christmas, and we're like, oh, shit, Christmas time.
Yep. All right, so we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you for listening. We are on any podcasting app that you can think of, like Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify as well. It's really easy to get the episodes on there. Subscribe and leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We're on Twitter at Blood and Black Rum. We have a Patreon account at patreon.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast if you want to donate to us. And you can always write to us at our email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you like or don't like about the show, what you want to see us cover in subsequent episodes. Thank you for listening. We will see you back in 2 weeks. And other than that, please don't get divorced.
Take care.